My sister didn't just throw me out of the house. She threw me out like trash. One minute I was dragging my suitcase toward the gate, finally ready to move into the tiny apartment I'd paid for myself. And the next, she ripped it out of my hands with a force that shocked me. "You're abandoning this family," she screamed, her face twisted with rage. Before I could respond, she hurled my suitcase into the rain-soaked street. The zipper burst open on impact. My clothes scattered across the wet pavement, blouses, underwear, the dress I'd saved for months to buy, all soaking in dirty puddles. The taxi driver I'd hired sat frozen in his car, clearly unsure whether to help or just drive away from this mess. I stood there stunned, rain already soaking through my jacket, watching my belongings get ruined. "You think you're better than us?" my sister shouted, positioning herself between me and the gate. "Taking everything for yourself while we struggle." My mother's silhouette appeared in the doorway behind her, arms folded across her chest, face unreadable, doing absolutely nothing to stop this. My sister's hand closed around the gate lock. "If you step outside this compound, don't ever come back." She turned the key with a sharp click that sounded final. I stood in the rain, shaking, mascara running down my cheeks, my fingers numb around the wet handle of my remaining bag. Something inside me snapped. My name is Tamsin Rowe, and that was the night I decided that if my sister wanted me on the other side of that gate so badly, one day I would buy the whole place. And she'd be the one answering to me. I bent down in the rain and started gathering my clothes from the street. My hands shook, from cold, from humiliation, from rage I couldn't let myself feel yet because feeling it would mean breaking down completely. The taxi driver finally got out and helped me. He didn't say anything, just picked up my things with careful respect, like he understood this was more than just scattered clothes. "I'm sorry," he said quietly as we stuffed everything back into my broken suitcase. Through the gate bars, I could see my sister standing with her arms crossed. Watching me scramble in the mud like this was entertainment. My mother had disappeared back inside. 26 years I'd lived in that house. 26 years of being the responsible daughter, the one who paid bills when money got tight, the one who sacrificed so everyone else could have what they wanted. And this was how it ended, on my knees in the rain, picking my underwear out of puddles while my sister made sure I knew I was nothing to them. I looked up at her through the bars, rain dripping from my hair. "I'll remember this," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She laughed. "Remember what? That you abandoned your family when we needed you most. Good. Remember that when you're alone." The driver helped me into the taxi with my ruined suitcase. As we pulled away, I turned back once. The house stood there, warm lights glowing in the windows, the black gate firmly locked. I would never forget that image. I grew up in that house, like a guest who never quite belonged. Good enough to cook when my mother was tired. Good enough to clean when my sister was too busy. Good enough to pay bills when money mysteriously disappeared from the household budget. But never good enough to be loved without conditions. My sister was the golden child, loud, confident, demanding. She got new clothes while I wore hand-me-downs. She got driving lessons while I took the bus. She got her college tuition paid while I worked nights to afford community college courses. And somehow, I was the responsible one, who magically produced cash whenever there was a crisis. "Tamsin will help," my mother would say, not asking, just stating it as fact. And I always did, because I wanted to belong. Because I thought if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see me as family instead of a resource. I worked extra shifts at the medical supply store, took online courses in secret during lunch breaks, and handed over most of my paycheck while listening to them joke about how I'd never survive without this family. My sister would laugh. "What would you even do out there? You need us." I'd smile and pretend it didn't hurt. But it did hurt, every single time. Because deep down, I knew they were right about one thing. I was afraid I couldn't survive alone. I'd been so busy being their support system that I'd never built my own foundation. Until the night I overheard their conversation. It happened 3 weeks before the gate incident. I came home early from my shift because I'd been feeling sick. The house was supposed to be empty. My sister had said she was meeting friends. My mother had mentioned shopping. But I heard voices coming from the kitchen as I walked in. Her savings are basically family money anyway, my sister was saying. She's lived here rent-free for years. She owes us. My mother's voice, calmer. I don't know if Tamsin will see it that way. We don't need to ask her permission, my sister insisted. My business needs capital now, or I'll lose everything I've invested. The bank won't give me more without collateral, but Tamsin's account has at least $15,000 in it. I froze in the hallway, my bag still on my shoulder. She'll understand, my sister continued. Family helps family. Besides, once my business takes off, I'll pay her back with interest. This is an investment opportunity for her. How would we access it? My mother asked. She has her account information in that folder in her room. I've seen it. We could. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I backed out of the house silently, my heart hammering so hard I thought they might hear it. I walked 2 blocks before I finally stopped and let myself process what I'd just heard. They were planning to steal from me, not borrow, steal without asking, without my knowledge. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped begging to be chosen. The next morning, I went to the bank before work. I need to change all my account passwords and security questions, I told the representative, and I want alerts set up for any access attempts. She processed my requests without asking why my hands were shaking. Then I went to my job at the medical supply store and asked my manager for extra hours. Any shifts available. Weekends, evenings, didn't matter. Everything okay, Tamsin? She asked, concerned. I'm saving for something important, I said. That night, I started looking for apartments. Nothing fancy, just a studio I could afford on my own. The cheapest option I could find was $650 a month, which would take nearly all my income after essentials. But it would be mine. I also started looking at job listings, something with more potential, better pay. I'd been comfortable at the medical supply store, but comfortable wasn't enough anymore. A listing caught my eye, administrative assistant at Cornerstone Real Estate, entry-level position, on-the-job training provided. They were a small firm, relatively new, looking for someone willing to learn. The pay wasn't much better than what I made now, but the opportunity, learning about property, investments, how money and ownership actually worked, that felt important somehow. I applied that night. 3 days later, they called me for an interview. 2 weeks later, I had a new job and a lease on a studio apartment. My family didn't know about any of it. I kept going to work, kept coming home, kept being the responsible daughter. But I was planning my exit. The night I told them I was moving out, my mother's face went blank with shock. Moving out? Why would you move out? I found my own place, I said calmly. It's time. My sister appeared from the living room, her expression immediately hostile. What place? You can barely afford groceries. How are you going to afford rent? I got a new job. I've been saving. I'll manage. This is ridiculous, my mother said. You're part of this family. You live here. I'm 26 years old, I reminded her gently. Most people my age have their own places. Most people your age have families who love them, my sister snapped. You're just running away because you're selfish. The irony of that statement, coming from the woman who'd planned to steal my savings, was almost funny. I'm not running away, I said. I'm just ready to start my own life. With what money? My sister demanded. You said you've been saving, but you also told Mom last month you couldn't afford to help with her dental work because money was tight. Guilt stabbed through me. My mother's dental appointment, I had helped despite being broke afterward. I've been figuring it out, I said. By being secretive and selfish, my sister shot back. You're abandoning us when we need you most. My business is at a critical stage. Mom needs support, and you're just leaving. Your business is not my responsibility, I said. finally saying what I'd been thinking for months. Her face went red. Everything we've done for you, and this is how you repay us. That was when I should have walked away. But I didn't. I stayed and argued for another hour before finally going to pack. The taxi was scheduled for 8 p.m. I'd arranged it carefully, planned to leave while they were watching television, slip out quietly. But my sister had been waiting for me. She blocked the doorway as I tried to carry my suitcase out. "You're really doing this, really abandoning your family." "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm moving 20 minutes away." "You're taking everything for yourself," she hissed. "All that money you've been hiding, all those opportunities you've kept secret. You think we don't know you've been planning this behind our backs?" "I wasn't hiding anything." "You were sneaking around, new job, new apartment, not telling anyone. That's hiding, Tamsin, that's betrayal." My mother appeared behind her but said nothing, just watched. "Please move," I said. "My ride is here." That's when my sister grabbed my suitcase and ripped it from my hands. The rest happened so fast, her throwing it into the rain, my clothes scattering, the gate slamming, the lock clicking. The humiliation of being thrown out like trash while my mother did nothing. I gathered my things in the rain, got in the taxi, left. The driver helped me carry my broken suitcase up 3 flights of stairs to my new studio apartment. He refused payment for the extra help. "You're going to be okay," he said before leaving. "Anyone who fights that hard to stand up for themselves always ends up okay." I hoped he was right. Because standing in that empty studio apartment, looking at my ruined clothes, I felt anything but okay. My new studio apartment was smaller than my childhood bedroom. One room serving as bedroom, living room, and dining room. A tiny kitchen alcove with a mini fridge and a 2-burner stove. A bathroom the size of a closet. But it was mine. I hung my wet clothes over every surface to dry. The shower rod, the backs of chairs, draped across the window screen. The apartment smelled like rain and detergent for 3 days. I started my job at Cornerstone Real Estate the following Monday, still bruised from the weekend's events, but determined to appear professional. The office was small, just 4 agents, a broker named Felix who owned the company, and me as the administrative assistant/receptionist/everything else person. "You'll learn by doing," Felix told me on my first day. "Answer phones, schedule viewings, handle paperwork, pay attention to everything. Real estate is about details." I paid attention to everything. I learned how listings worked, how property values were assessed, how mortgages and financing and credit scores determined who could buy what, how location, condition, and market timing could make or break a deal. I started understanding that property was power, that ownership was security, that the house I'd grown up in represented more than just shelter. It represented stability, equity, investment. I also learned that most people didn't actually understand what they owned or how vulnerable they were to losing it. Like my family, I would discover later. But I didn't know that yet. I worked during the day at Cornerstone Real Estate and took freelance writing gigs at night. Product descriptions, blog posts, website copy, anything I could do on my laptop that paid. I made an extra $500 $800 a month that way, which covered groceries and utilities. Sleep became optional. I existed on coffee and determination. My mother called twice in the first month, both times to ask when I was coming home. "I am home," I told her. "I have my own place now." "You know what I mean, Tamsin. When are you coming back to the family?" "I haven't left the family. I just don't live there anymore." "Your sister is very hurt by what you did." The absurdity of that statement, my sister, who'd thrown my belongings into the rain, was hurt, made me want to laugh and scream simultaneously. "I need to go," I said. "I have work." She didn't call again for months. My sister never called at all, but she posted on social media constantly about fake people who abandon family when things get tough, and blood being thicker than water except when people get selfish. I blocked her after the third passive-aggressive post, clearly directed at me. Meanwhile, at Cornerstone, I started handling more complex tasks. Felix let me sit in on client meetings, teaching me how negotiations worked, how to spot problems in property disclosures, how to read between the lines when sellers or buyers were hiding something. "You're good at this," he told me after I caught a major issue in a commercial lease agreement. "You see details other people miss." "I'm used to paying attention," I said. What I didn't say, I'd spent my whole life reading the room, anticipating needs, watching for signs that I was about to be blamed for something. Those skills translated surprisingly well to real estate. 6 months after moving out, Felix offered me an opportunity. "There's an intensive real estate licensing program starting next month," he said. 8 weeks, evenings and weekends. If you pass the exam, you become a licensed agent. "I can't afford that," I said immediately. The courses cost $2,000, money I absolutely didn't have. "What if Cornerstone covered half as an investment in your development?" he suggested. "You'd owe us a year of work after getting licensed, but you'd earn commission on any deals you close. Much better than hourly wages." I did the math in my head. If I picked up extra freelance work, cut my grocery budget even further, used the little emergency fund I'd been rebuilding. "I'll do it," I said. For 8 weeks, I worked at the office during the day, took classes 4 evenings a week and all day Saturday, and did freelance work whenever else I could squeeze it in. I slept 4 hours a night, lived on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, canceled the streaming subscriptions I'd been treating myself to. But I studied harder than I'd studied for anything in my life. Real estate law, property rights, contract regulations, financing structures, market analysis, ethics requirements. I learned that property ownership was both simpler and more complex than most people realized. That a house wasn't just a building, it was a legal entity, a financial asset, a web of contracts and obligations and rights. I learned about foreclosure, about how easily people could lose their homes when they overextended themselves financially, when they borrowed against their equity without solid repayment plans, when they bet everything on business ventures that failed. I learned that the bank always got its money back, one way or another. I passed my licensing exam on the first try. Felix took me out for coffee to celebrate. "Now the real work starts. You ready to be an actual agent?" "Absolutely." "Good, because I'm assigning you your first potential listing, a small condo that needs work, owners motivated, low commission but good practice." I closed that deal in 3 weeks. My first commission check was $1,800, more than I'd made in a month at my old job. I cried when I deposited it. Over the next year, I closed 6 more deals. Small properties, first-time buyers, modest commissions. But I was learning, building a reputation, making connections. I started understanding the market, which neighborhoods were appreciating, which properties were overpriced, which listings would move quickly and which would sit for months. I also started investing my commission checks carefully, not in big risks, but in a real estate investment trust that Felix recommended, building actual wealth slowly. During this time, I heard through distant cousins that my sister's business was struggling. The boutique clothing store she'd opened with such confidence was bleeding money, facing competition from online retailers, dealing with inventory she couldn't move. My parents had apparently helped her financially, significantly. But I was busy building my own life. I didn't ask questions. My mother called once to ask if I could lend money for some family emergency she wouldn't specify. I politely declined. She hung up angry. I felt guilty for about 10 minutes. Then I remembered them planning to steal from me and went back to work. 2 years after leaving, I was a different person. Not just professionally, but fundamentally. I'd learned I could survive on my own. More than survive, I could build something real. I'd moved from my tiny studio to a modest 1-bedroom apartment. I had savings again, real savings that nobody could touch. I had a career trajectory instead of just a job. I'd also started dabbling in property investment myself, partnering with Felix on a small flip project where I handled the renovation coordination and he provided most of the capital. We split the profit 30-70. My 30% was $8,000, the biggest single check I'd ever received. You have good instincts for this, Felix said. Have you thought about branching out on your own eventually? Maybe, I said, but I'm still learning. You're learning fast, faster than most agents I've worked with. That same month, I ran into an old neighbor at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, like she wasn't sure whether to say hello. Tamsin, I heard you'd left the area. Just moved to my own place, I said, still around. How are you doing? The way she asked suggested she knew something I didn't. I'm doing well, really well actually. She nodded slowly. That's good, I'm glad. Your family's been going through a difficult time. Oh. She hesitated. I probably shouldn't say anything. It's fine, I said, even though my stomach had started churning. Your sister's business closed last year, and I heard your parents had to refinance the house to help her with the debt. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up. She excused herself quickly, leaving me standing there with my groceries. My parents had refinanced the house. I tried not to think about what the neighbor had told me. It wasn't my problem. I'd left that house, that family drama behind me. I had my own life now. But at night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Refinancing meant my parents had taken out a new loan against the house's equity, the value the house had gained over decades of ownership. They'd borrowed money using the house as collateral. If they couldn't make the payments, they could lose the house. But they wouldn't be that irresponsible, I told myself. They were adults. They'd managed that property for 30 years. They knew what they were doing. I focused on my work instead, built my client base, closed deals, kept investing my commissions carefully. 3 years after leaving, I had enough saved to partner with Felix on a more significant investment, an actual rental property that needed minor renovation. We bought it, fixed it up, and started collecting rent from tenants. My share of the monthly rental income was $600, passive income, Felix called it. Money that came in whether I worked that month or not. It was the first time I understood what financial security actually meant. Not just having money in the bank, but having money that generated more money. Having assets that worked for you instead of you working desperately for a paycheck. Meanwhile, I heard nothing from my family. No calls, no texts. It was like I'd never existed to them. Part of me was relieved. Part of me, despite everything, was hurt. But I kept moving forward. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, 4 years after I'd left. I was at the office reviewing comps for a new listing when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Tamsin Rowe, a professional voice female. Speaking. This is Kieran Walsh from First National Bank's Asset Recovery Department. I'm calling regarding a property at 1847 Ashwood Drive. Our records show you lived at this address previously. My childhood home's address. My heart started pounding. I don't live there anymore. That's my parents' house. I'm aware. We're attempting to reach Lawrence and Beatrice Rowe regarding this property. They haven't responded to our notices. Since you're listed as next of kin on some older documents, I thought you might be able to help us make contact. What's this about? She hesitated. The property is currently in default on its mortgage payments. We've initiated foreclosure proceedings. The room spun slightly. Foreclosure. The property has been in arrears for 7 months. We've sent multiple notices. At this point, the property will be auctioned to recover the outstanding debt unless the balance is paid in full within 30 days. How much is owed? I asked, my voice automatic, professional. My real estate training kicking in even as my personal history tried to drag me under. I can't disclose specific amounts to non-owners, but if you can help us reach your parents to discuss payment arrangements, that would be beneficial for all parties. I gave her my parents' phone number, the one I hadn't called in years. I'm not in contact with them regularly. That's all I can offer. Thank you, Ms. Rowe. After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone. My childhood home was being foreclosed, the house where I'd grown up, the house my sister had locked me out of, the house my parents had refinanced to save my sister's failing business. They were losing everything. And somehow, despite everything, I felt a sick twist in my stomach that might have been concern. I told myself it wasn't my problem. For 2 days, I tried to forget about the phone call and focus on my work. But on the third day, I found myself looking up the property records online. Public information, available to anyone, especially to licensed real estate agents who knew where to look. The records told a devastating story. My parents had originally purchased the house in 1985 for $89,000. They'd paid off the original mortgage in 2010. The house had been theirs, free and clear. Then, 4 years ago, right around when my sister's business was failing, they'd taken out a new mortgage for $180,000, a refinance to pull equity out of the property. They'd borrowed against 30 years of ownership. According to the records, they'd made regular payments for the first year. Then payments became sporadic. Then they stopped entirely 7 months ago. The current market value of the house was estimated at $285,000. They owed approximately $170,000 after 4 years of payments. If the house sold at auction, the bank would recover what they were owed. My parents would get whatever was left after fees and costs, and they'd be forced out with nowhere to go and no equity remaining. They'd gambled everything on my sister's business and lost. I stared at the foreclosure notice posted in the public records. Auctions scheduled for 45 days from now. And I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not pity, not satisfaction. Possibility. I called Felix the next morning. I need to talk to you about something, hypothetically. Why do I feel like this isn't hypothetical at all? There's a foreclosure auction coming up, I said. Property I have personal history with, complicated personal history. I'm thinking about bidding on it. Family property, he guessed immediately. The house I grew up in, the one I told you about, where my sister threw my stuff in the rain. He was quiet for a moment. Tamsin, foreclosure auctions can get emotional. You need to be absolutely clear about why you're doing this. I am clear, I said. It's a solid property in a good neighborhood, undervalued because of the foreclosure. If I can get it at the right price, it's a smart investment. And the fact that your family currently lives there. They're going to lose it either way, I said. Someone's going to buy it at auction. Why not me? Because mixing business and family drama never ends well. My family drama ended 4 years ago when they locked me out. This is just business. But we both knew I was lying. This was personal, deeply personal. Felix sighed. How much do you have available for this? My savings, plus I could probably get a loan approved for the rest. I've been building credit. I have the rental property income. I think I could swing it. You'd need about $180,000 to cover the debt plus fees. Probably more if other investors show up to bid. I know. Tamsin, are you sure about this? I thought about standing in the rain, watching my mother's silhouette turn away while my sister locked me out. The gate I'd begged to be let through. I'm sure, I said. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing. I got pre-approved for a mortgage that would cover up to $200,000. I reviewed the property records obsessively. I drove by the house twice, just to see it again, to remind myself what I was doing this for. The black gate was rusting now. The paint on the house was peeling. The garden my mother used to maintain was overgrown. 4 years without me contributing financially had clearly taken their toll even before the foreclosure. I didn't contact my family, didn't warn them I was planning to bid. They'd get the standard notices about the auction being open to public bidders. That was all the warning they were entitled to. Felix helped me prepare a maximum bid strategy. Don't get emotional during the auction. Set your limit and stick to it. Don't get into a bidding war over sentimentality. I won't. I mean it, Tamsin. I've seen people destroy themselves financially over emotional property decisions. I understand. The night before the auction, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed imagining what would happen when I won the bid, how I'd tell them, what their faces would look like when they realized. Would my sister remember throwing my luggage in the rain? Would my mother remember watching it happen and doing nothing? Would they understand what they'd created by treating me as disposable? At 3 a.m., I got up and made coffee, sat at my small dining table reviewing my financial documents one more time. This was happening. Tomorrow, I was going to buy the house I'd been thrown out of. And whatever came after, that was the future I'd earned by refusing to stay locked outside that gate. The auction was held at the county courthouse at 10 a.m. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best professional outfit, navy blazer, pressed pants, heels that made me feel taller and more confident than I actually felt. About 20 people gathered for the auction. Most were investors who attended these regularly, looking for deals. A few were first-time homebuyers hopping for a discount. My parents weren't there, neither was my sister. The auctioneer explained the rules. Sealed bid auction, highest bid wins, proof of funds required immediately, 30-day closing period. When 1847 Ashwood Drive came up, my heart started pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Opening bid, $150,000. I submitted my sealed bid, $185,000. It felt like hours before the auctioneer opened all the bids, though it was probably only minutes. Sold to bidder number 47 for $185,000. Bidder number 47 was me. I walked forward on shaking legs to provide my pre-approval documents and sign the initial paperwork. The property was mine, pending the full closing process, but effectively mine. I'd just bought my childhood home out from under my family. Felix was waiting outside when I came out. Well, I got it. How do you feel? I didn't answer immediately because I wasn't entirely sure. Triumphant, vindicated, terrified, all of the above. Ask me again in 30 days, I finally said. You need to tell them, Felix said quietly, before they find out some other way. I know. But I didn't do it that day. I went home and sat in my apartment and processed the enormity of what I'd just done. I decided to handle it through a lawyer. Not because I was afraid to face them, though maybe I was a little, but because this needed to be legal, documented, professional. Not a family drama, but a property transfer. I hired an attorney who specialized in real estate transactions. I need you to handle notification to the current occupants that the property has been sold and they need to vacate. Standard eviction proceedings. Yes, but I want to offer them something. I explained what I had in mind. The attorney raised his eyebrows. That's generous, considering the circumstances. I don't want to be cruel, I said. I just want to be clear that things have changed. 1 week after the auction, my attorney hand-delivered a formal notice to 1847 Ashwood Drive. The document explained that the property had been sold at foreclosure auction, that the new owner was taking possession in 30 days, and that the current occupants needed to vacate. It also included an offer. I would pay the deposit and first month's rent on a reasonable apartment for them, conditional on them vacating peacefully and not causing damage to the property. My mother called me 3 hours after receiving the notice. Tamsin, her voice was shaking. Did you do this? I bought the house at auction, yes. You bought our home, your family home, just to hurt us. I bought a foreclosed property as an investment, I said calmly. The fact that you used to own it is incidental. How can you say that? This is where you grew up. This is where I grew up and then got thrown out of, I corrected. Do you remember that night, Mom, when my sister threw my belongings in the rain and you did nothing? Silence. You told me if I left not to come back, I continued. So I didn't. I built my own life. Now the property is mine, legally purchased. You have 30 days to leave." "We have nowhere to go," she whispered. "Read the full notice. There's an offer included. Take it or don't, that's your choice." I hung up before she could respond. My sister called the next day, screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You vindictive bitch. You bought our house just to throw us out. This is revenge, and everyone will know it." "It's not revenge," I said tiredly. "It's a property transaction. You lost the house when you stopped making mortgage payments. Because of the business. Because we were trying to build something and it didn't work out. That doesn't mean you get to steal our home." "I didn't steal anything. The bank foreclosed because you defaulted. I bought it legally at auction. Those are just facts." "Facts," she laughed bitterly. "The fact is you're punishing us for that one night years ago when you decided to abandon your family. That one night when you threw my clothes in the rain and locked me out. You were being dramatic. You were leaving anyway." "And now you're leaving," I said. "Read the offer. I'm giving you more consideration than you gave me." "We're not taking your blood money," she spat. "We'll fight this. We'll sue you for predatory." "Sue me for what?" "Legally purchasing a foreclosed property at public auction. Please do. I have an excellent attorney." She hung up on me. I sat there feeling hollow. This wasn't the triumph I'd imagined. It just felt sad and necessary and complicated. But I didn't regret it. I'd made my choice. 3 days later, my attorney informed me they'd accepted the offer. They'd be out before the 30-day deadline, and I'd pay for their apartment deposit as promised. "They want it on record that they're accepting under protest," my attorney added. "Fine, as long as they're out. They also want to take some fixtures, light fixtures they claim to have installed, the back patio furniture, things like that. Anything that's legally theirs, they can take. I don't want their possessions." The day I went back to the house with my own keys was surreal. 27 days after the auction, my family had moved out. The attorney confirmed the property was vacant and I could take possession. I stood at the black gate, the same gate my sister had locked 4 years ago, and unlocked it with keys that had my name on the title. The gate swung open smoothly despite the rust. I walked up the path I'd walked hundreds of times as a child, the same cracked concrete, the same tree my father had planted when I was born, now grown tall. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was empty. They'd taken most of the furniture, as was their right. Light fixtures were missing where they'd removed the ones they claimed, nail holes in the walls where pictures had hung. But the bones of the house were the same. The layout I'd known by heart, the kitchen where I'd cooked countless meals, the living room where I'd pretended to be part of a happy family. My old bedroom was empty, except for some boxes they'd apparently abandoned. I opened one, old papers, report cards, a stuffed animal I'd loved as a child. Things they'd left behind because they weren't worth moving. I sat on the floor of that empty bedroom and let myself feel everything I'd been pushing down for weeks. The anger, the sadness, the complicated grief of getting everything I'd fought for and discovering it felt different than I'd imagined. I wasn't sure how long I sat there before I finally stood up, brushed off my pants, and walked back through the house with a notepad, making a list of repairs and updates needed. This was mine now, my investment, my property, my future. The past could stay in these empty rooms. I was building something new. I spent 2 months renovating the house. Not a complete overhaul, I couldn't afford that, but strategic updates. Fresh paint throughout, new light fixtures, repaired the damaged walls, refinished the hardwood floors, replaced worn carpet, updated the bathrooms with modern fixtures. I kept the good bones and fixed what was broken. Felix helped me find reliable contractors. I did some of the painting myself to save money. It became a weekend project, me in old clothes, transforming the house I'd grown up in into something that felt new. The neighbors watched curiously. A few asked what had happened to my family. "They moved to a smaller place," I said neutrally. "I bought this as an investment property." Technically true. I didn't hear from my family during this time. The silence was both a relief and an ache I didn't quite know what to do with. When the renovations were complete, I had a choice to make: rent it out or sell it. Renting would provide steady income. The property would continue appreciating while generating monthly cash flow. Selling would give me a lump sum, probably $30,000 $40,000 profit after renovation costs and closing fees. Not a fortune, but significant. I listed it as a rental. Within 2 weeks, I had 5 applications. I chose a young couple with solid jobs and good references. They moved in a month later, paying $2,100 in monthly rent. After the mortgage payment, I cleared about $800 a month in profit. The house that had represented everything I'd lost was now generating income that built my future. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months after taking possession, I ran into my mother at the grocery store. I saw her first and almost turned around to avoid the interaction, but she'd already seen me. "Tamsin," her voice was careful, uncertain. "Mom." We stood there awkwardly in the produce section, other shoppers moving around us. "How are you?" she asked. "I'm well, you?" "We're managing. The apartment is small, but it's fine." I nodded, not sure what else to say. "Your sister is working at a call center now." She continued. "It's not what she imagined, but it pays the bills." "That's good." Another long pause. "Did you have to buy the house?" she finally asked, her voice cracking slightly. "Of all the properties you could have invested in, did it have to be ours?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a woman who'd gotten old while I wasn't paying attention. Gray hair where there used to be brown, lines around her eyes that seemed deeper than before. "It was a foreclosed property in a good neighborhood," I said. "It made financial sense." That's all it was, financial sense. I thought about lying, about pretending it had been purely business. But we'd had enough lies. "No," I admitted. "It wasn't just financial sense, it was also proving something to myself. To you, I don't know." She nodded slowly. "Did it work? Did you prove whatever you needed to prove?" "I don't know that either," I said honestly, "but I'm not sorry I did it." "Your sister is," she said quietly. "Sorry, I mean, she won't admit it, but she is. She asks about you sometimes." "Does she remember throwing my clothes in the rain?" My mother flinched. She was angry. She felt like you were abandoning us. "I wasn't abandoning anyone. I was trying to survive." "I know that now," she whispered. "I didn't understand it then, but I do now." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was close. A year after buying the house, I paid off the mortgage early using profits from other investments. The property was fully mine. No bank, no debt, just a clear title with my name on it. I celebrated by taking myself to dinner at the restaurant where my ex-fiancé had once proposed his business idea, the one I'd rejected because I'd learned to be careful with my money. I ordered the expensive wine, the steak, the dessert. I paid with a credit card that I'd pay off in full that month because I understood how to manage money now, how to use credit responsibly, how to build wealth slowly, carefully, strategically. My phone buzzed with a text from Felix. "Heard you paid off the Ashwood property. Well done. Proud of you." I smiled and texted back. "Thanks for taking a chance on me all those years ago." "You took a chance on yourself. I just watched it happen." That night, driving home to my now nicer apartment in a better neighborhood, I thought about the girl who'd stood in the rain 4 years ago, her clothes scattered in puddles, her sister screaming that she'd never survive alone. That girl had been terrified, broken, convinced she needed them to survive. She'd been wrong. She'd survived. More than survived, she'd built something real and solid and entirely her own. The house was just one piece of it. The real victory was the person I'd become, someone who didn't need to beg anyone for permission to exist, who didn't measure her worth by whether her family chose her. Someone who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't hurting the people who hurt you. It was building a life so good that their opinions stopped mattering entirely. Today, 5 years after being thrown out in the rain, I own 3 properties. The original house, still rented to the same couple who have been model tenants. A condo I bought and flipped for profit. And my own townhouse, purchased outright last year, no mortgage, just mine. I've built a comfortable life. Not extravagant, but secure in ways I never imagined possible when I was living paycheck to paycheck and handing my money over to family members who saw me as an ATM. My sister and I don't speak. My mother and I have a polite but distant relationship, occasional text messages on holidays, nothing deeper. My father passed away 2 years ago, and I attended the funeral but left immediately after. Some relationships don't survive the truth about what they really were. Last month, I drove past the house on Ashwood Drive. The tenants have maintained it beautifully. The garden is thriving. Fresh paint on the gate. It looks loved in a way it never quite did when I lived there. I felt nothing but satisfaction seeing it. No pain, no anger, just the quiet knowledge that I'd turned something that hurt me into something that serves me. The gate that once locked me out opens, only when I choose now. That's not revenge. That's justice. The kind that comes from refusing to accept someone else's assessment of your worth. The kind that builds foundations instead of burning bridges. My real revenge wasn't buying the house they lost. It was becoming the kind of person who could buy it, who had the skills, the resources, the determination to stand at that foreclosure auction and win. It was proving that the girl they threw away was the most valuable thing they ever had. And now she belongs only to herself.